Bye. Recording in progress.
I suppose the word of the week has to be agent. Okay.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and guests, colleagues from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, colleagues from the School of Life Sciences, more specifically, and I think we have a number of guests from outside of the university as well. So we would just like, as the School of Life Sciences, welcome you. And without further ado, I would like to hand over the floor to our Dean and our Head of School, Professor Olaniran, for a brief word of welcome to all of our delegates to this very, very important workshop. Thank you very much, Prof. Olaniran.
Thank you, Andre. Good morning, colleagues, and thanks for joining us for this important panel discussion on harnessing the potential of AI and ChatGPT in particular in higher education. Artificial intelligence, as you know, which is the ability of machines and computers to perform tasks usually done by humans, continues to influence our daily activities. It makes it possible for machines, for example, to learn from experience, to adjust to new inputs, and to perform human-like tasks. It has created new opportunities to progress on critical issues, such as in health, education, and the environment.
Meanwhile, President.
Machine learning, for example, is a subset of artificial intelligence, has been used over the years in the building of robotics, self-driving cars, and has also been used in speech and image recognition, as well as in market trends forecasting. Now, as you're aware, ChatGPT is something that everybody is talking about. And it's the artificial intelligence chatbot, which has recently been developed by OpenAI, and it was launched in November 2022. This chatbot has been trained on massive text data and has been shown to be able to generate human-like text responses to given prompt. It's been shown to be able to answer questions. It can converse on a variety of topics, and it can even generate creative writing pieces, which gets everybody worried. Since its availability in late November last year, it's been used to be able to generate original essays. It's been used to write stories and song lyrics in response to user prompts. And it's also been shown to be able to draft research paper abstracts, which is a cause for concern. In January this year, it made a very serious headlines because of its ability to be able to pass prestigious graduate level exams from law and business schools, although there's indication that it wasn't with particularly high marks, but it's still a cause for concern. And this has got everybody talking, and at the same time, very worried about the impact that this will have in the higher education sector. As if this is not enough, just this Tuesday, 14th March, OpenAI again announced the launch of an updated version, which is the GPT-4, that has been trained on vast amounts of online data to be able to generate even more complex responses. And this definitely will change the way we use the internet and the way we create. It also adds to the ongoing challenging questions around how artificial intelligence tools can upend professions, how it can shift our relationship with technology, and most importantly, how it can enable students to cheat. According to an article in CNN Business yesterday, there are so many enhancements in this new GPT-4. It's been shown to be able to analyze modern text. There are examples where it's been shown that it could generate functional websites within minutes if just shown a drawing. It's been shown that it can be shown pictures of things in the interior of a refrigerator, and it can be prompted to come up with a meal based on the ingredients that's seen in those fridge. It's been shown that it makes coding even much easier and could change things in terms of how apps are developed. It's been shown, for example, to be able to also pass tests in flying colors. They show that it passed a simulated law school bar exam with a score which is around top 10% of the test takers, which is even more worrying. It provides more precise responses, up to 25,000 words. And it's been shown to be able to provide even detailed instructions for most unique scenarios. For example, you can even ask it to help you to extract, how to extract DNA from a strawberry. And it's been shown now that it will streamline work across various industries, and everybody's talking about it. Because of its potential applications, for example, in healthcare for remote diagnosis, lawyers are talking about the possible applications in their practices, and some dating sites have also indicated that they can use the tool to better match their users. Within the first 2 months of its launch, colleagues, ChatGPT has more than 100 million users. More than 13 million daily visitors has been reported as of 2023, and that makes it the fastest growing consumer application. And it is expected that by the end of the last quarter of the year 2023, it will cross the 1 billion user mark. Now, some schools in the New York and situ, for example, they ban students and teachers from using the ChatGPT. In some countries, they are not available. However, there are beliefs, very strong beliefs, that this technology still ultimately has a place in the classroom. And that would depend on how we adapt our efforts to the offerings of the artificial intelligence. Today's workshop is aimed at initiating a dialogue among ourselves on the potential role of artificial intelligence and ChatGPT in particular in teaching and learning, as well as research within our STEM disciplines from a practical point of view. We are hoping that the discussions will assist in enriching our community of practices on the use of AI tools in our teaching and learning, as well as research space. And we hope that it will further provoke discussions, which we can follow up with a series of sessions. All right, with those opening remarks, I would like to welcome everyone for joining us for this session, despite your busy teaching and research commitments. I will also especially want to thank those who are joining us from outside the university for honoring the invitation and for making time to to join us. And I trust that you will find the discussion very useful and that you will also participate in the discussions. I would like to specially welcome and thank all the panel members, Professor Hafizah Chenia, Professor Vosloo, Professor Guegim Kana, for agreeing to be part of the discussion. And I want to thank in particular Professor Grace Leung, the Vice Dean for Teaching and Learning at the University of Johannesburg, for making time out of our busy schedule to be on this panel. Thank you very much for coming. And I hope that we're going to have a good interaction during the course of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Olaniran, for those welcoming words. I think you've set the stage perfectly for what is to come. I think just as background to the topic, I think this workshop was conceived very early in the new year, and we deferred the execution of that in anticipation of some other workshops that were running at that particular time. I think the full impetus of the reason why we are hosting this workshop today is really to move away from the theoretical aspects and the higher level aspects to get down to the practical application and implications of these AI bots in our teaching and learning and in our research environment. So some issues may be peculiar to the research field, some may be peculiar to the teaching and learning field, but I think the bulk of the issues are cross-cutting. And we have got fantastic speakers today to highlight some of the issues with you and work with us to get to some sort of solution and practical application of this technology in our daily lives. The format that we will follow is that we will provide a speaking opportunity to each of the three speakers to come. And if you have burning questions, please hold on to them until we get to the end of the program. And if you had a look at the flyer that we put out, it was about a dialogue. And this is really what we're trying to instill here. Everybody's feeling the way around this new technology, and we really need everyone's concerted input and creativity to get around this disruption and see how we harness. And I think this is very important in the title of the talk, to harness the potential of these new technologies in our diverse fields. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Professor Hafizah Chenia. So Hafizah is an associate professor in the discipline of microbiology, and the research group focuses on antimicrobial resistance and drug discovery using microbes. Hafizah teaches advanced bacteriology to our level 3 microbiology students and bacteriology to BSc honors students. Her interest is in teaching and learning and how active and blended learning strategies can be used to engage students and improve student skills development. Based on all the hype regarding AI and ChatGPT, she has been following higher education responses and how academics worldwide are responding and using and rising to the paradigm shift in teaching and learning. So I think Hafizah, welcome. Thank you very much for your presentation. And based on your bio, you are the perfect person to talk to us about this. Thank you very much, Hafizah.
Thank you, Professor Vosloo, for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak to the audience about the higher education response to ChatGPT. I have two disclaimers. The first one being that I am just an average academic who is trying to make sense of ChatGPT and how it's going to affect my daily activities in terms of teaching and learning. The second disclaimer that I would like to make is that this presentation was not prepared by ChatGPT. I did consult with ChatGPT, but a lot of it was done based on trying to see what other people have been talking about. So is this an educational apocalypse, or should we look at this as an educational reboot? Prof. Olaniran set the stage talking about all of the horrors that we as teachers might come across in terms of our interaction with ChatGPT. And of course, when this was released, and it was in November 2022, immediately there were different outlooks based on whether it was the student or the teacher or the IT staff. Everyone has their own sort of perspective of how ChatGPT is going to affect their lives. But as academics at the university, we should be thinking about what is ChatGPT and AI? How is this going to impact us in terms of higher education? How am I going to teach my classes knowing that this tool exists? How can I use it as a tool for teaching and learning? Should it be blocked through the university internet filter, or should it even be banned, like some universities have actually done? So Prof. Olaniran has already given you quite interesting sort of intro into what ChatGPT is. So I'm not going to go into the slide in too much detail, but like he said, it's a chatbot technology which is powered by artificial intelligence. And essentially it allows users to have a human-like conversation with a computer. It basically is a language model that utilizes deep learning for the acquisition of information that can actually be used to respond to a prompt or a question. And the prompt is something that is very important. So ChatGPT and other tools like it are really powerful tools which require minimal training, which allows them to generate text based on the large amounts of pre-trained data that they have been filled with. And I know most people are thinking, oh my word, machines are taking over the world. I mean, this is like all those horror movies come to life. But we need to understand what AI is. And ChatGPT is actually an example of narrow artificial intelligence. It is a language model, so it carries out narrowly defined tasks or a small set of related tasks. And this is completely different from strong general AI, which is what most people fear, where the AI or the machine is going to demonstrate intelligent behavior across a wide range of cognitive skills. So ChatGPT fills a niche of its own, but it's not that scary machine that is now going to take over the world, even though some of us in higher education are really concerned about it. One of the other things that we need to realize is that ChatGPT is not human. It has no real intelligence. It predicts the most likely response to a prompt. It's not sentient. It doesn't have any reasoning powers. This might change as the power of the technology increases, but at the moment, ChatGPT is not human. It can make mistakes. Computational linguists are now exploring this, and they want us to realize that it does not reason, it does not have ideas, it does not have thoughts. It is not a human. And so we should not be anthropomorphizing it because this is going to affect the psychological relationships that users have then with this type of technology. So, and I know I'm guilty of this as well. You know, in conversations, we would say like ChatGPT knows, or it says, or it thinks. Really, when we're talking about ChatGPT, we should say according to ChatGPT, or ChatGPT's output indicates something like this. So really, we need to keep it in mind that it's not generating new ideas, it's not human. It can be creative, but a lot of the creativity is based on pre-trained data that has come from some human. Right, the response from higher education and even K-12 or school districts and stuff like that has been really very interesting. You've had a gamut of sort of emotions that have, arisen based on the release of ChatGPT late in November 2022. And there were lots of different reactions. So some schools and some universities went extreme and said, well, we're banning it. We don't want students to use it, and it's going to be regarded as plagiarism. And then there are others where we're looking at how ChatGPT and tools like it, other AI tools, can actually be used as, in the teaching and learning process. So there's a whole mixture of emotions that teachers, irrespective of the level at which they're teaching, whether it's schools or universities, there's fear, there's excitement, there's uncertainty. This is as much a new technology to us as it is to our students. A lot of higher education institutions have basically been scrambling to try and provide guidelines to staff and students regarding the use of ChatGPT and other AI tools in education. And this is something that is very important. But a lot of the guidelines are related to plagiarism and the use of it and those kind of things. It's not about how it can actually be implemented in a day-to-day basis in our teaching processes. And I think Professors Leung and Kana are going to expound on that in their talks. But from a higher education perspective, what do we need to do? So we basically need to be able to formulate concrete recommendations, not only on detecting it, which is just not the most important part of ChatGPT in teaching and learning, but how to use it and how to allow students to get the most out of it. How can we improve the learning processes of the students? How can we teach better using this as a tool while still allowing students to take responsibility for their own learning and the development of their skills? And very importantly, do we now have to re-look at assessment? Do we have to tweak it? Do we have to reboot it to take ChatGPT and other AI tools into consideration? So there's a huge disruption in the way that we traditionally teach. And if you have a conversation with ChatGPT, you can even get some of the limitations directly from it. So there are limitations to this tool in as much as it is able to carry out a variety of things. So it does have some challenges with its accuracy, its handling of complex or abstract concepts. It was pre-trained up until 2021, so more current stuff is not available to it. It is not able to distinguish bias and gender context and stuff like that. So that is very problematic because it can sometimes give you outputs that might not be politically or ethically valid. And there are some really in a lot of publications, not publications, but on websites where people have been engaging with this. There was an example of where it was not able to do math in some instances. But these are just minor limitations. What we really need to consider is that the ChatGPT can actually be used as a tool in teaching and learning. And then it's going to bring about the shift in how we teach. So a shift in educational approaches. And we really need to start thinking about how we use a more skills-based and a problem-solving approach in teaching and learning, but using GPT as a tool. So other academics, and I've done this myself, in preparing for today's presentation, I went onto ChatGPT and put in a prompt and asked, how does ChatGPT impact higher education? How does it impact student learning? And other academics have done this as well. And ChatGPT gives you a whole range of things that it thinks is going to assist students with in terms of their learning process, from personalized learning to having a tutor who is available to the students 24/7, helping them to write, helping them with language learning, research assistance, increased use of online and distance learning. And so there's quite a variety of things that ChatGPT could potentially be used for in the learning process by students themselves. But of course, this is still a very new technology. I mean, it's really about 4 months old. We don't have enough data to actually tell us whether or not any of these are valid, to what extent they're valid, how they're going to impact the students that are going to be using this technology. And this is where there's going to be a huge need for people who specialize in education research to really get their hands into trying to understand how ChatGPT is going to impact how students learn, what are the changes that it's going to bring about to the education sphere. Similarly, if you look at what are the critical issues that are associated with ChatGPT and what are some of the sort of complaints that teachers would have, it's things like plagiarism, reduced critical thinking, lack of originality, students becoming dependent on technology, moving away from human interaction, the ethical concerns, the privacy concerns, concerns related to entrenchment of the digital divide, because ChatGPT is free. GPT-4, which is the more powerful, more updated version of it, is behind a paywall. But is this going to be a threat to resource poor countries? Is it going to increase the divides between those who have and those who do not have? So there's going to be unequal access, potential for exploitation of the data. I think what we need to realize is that ChatGPT is this big worldwide experiment that OpenAI is carrying out. It's using us to actually further train its machine tools to try and see how we're going to use the technology and how to actually improve the technology. So there are a number of valid concerns, but again, these are things that we would need to assess in real time, as well as having detailed studies by educational researchers who can really delve into how students are going to use this and the impact of ChatGPT on the students who are actually utilizing this technique. And so we can't ban this tool. We're going to have students who are going to go into a world or careers where they're going to need to be able to use these tools. They're going to have colleagues in their work environment who are not exactly human. This means that we basically need to empower them using this in the ethically so that it doesn't impact negatively upon student learning. And McKenna et al. Have suggested that if ChatGPT and other AI tools are used correctly, it will really open up a wonderful world of learning for students, and it will also assist teachers. In the article, they also spoke about the fact that we squandered the opportunity of emergency remote teaching and learning by not really looking at why and how we do assessments and what is the role of higher education. And they suggest that maybe the advent of ChatGPT is now for us a time to reflect on why we do assessments, how do we do assessments, and really are we very effective? And this requires us as academics and students as well to see how we can use prompts to actually fully exploit the potential that ChatGPT offers to us. But we need support from other academics, we need support from our institutions to help us in this process because it's quite a large task. But it can be regarded as a powerful tool, especially the power of the prompt to actually facilitate higher order teaching and learning. And it would differ from discipline to discipline. We need to think about whether we are going to assess the learning process or are we going to assess the product that emerges that might have come from ChatGPT. So we would need to look at it in context of curricula, evaluations, assessments. And here maybe what we need to think about is, should we bring in e-portfolios, for example, because this then allows the students to track, allows us as educators to track the critical engagement of students as part of their learning process, rather than them just providing an output. All right, so ChatGPT is something that is useful. We need to be able to integrate it into our educational context because our students' knowledge and skills change over time. They're becoming very dependent on media. And what we need to do is we need to ensure that although they're using this to find answers and to reach results, it must be done in a way that does not impact the learning process, because the learning process is more important than the actual answer. So the journey of learning is more important than the answer. And we as teachers need to acknowledge that, and students will also need to realize that. And we would need to change the way we ask questions. Rather than saying provide the answer to, we would perhaps need to say, how do I apply the answer that you got via ChatGPT to a problem that I have that requires me to know this answer? So if we use it correctly, we can utilize it for its positive impact without losing the learning process that we are trying to instill in the students that we have in our institutions. I just have a few more slides, and I just want to say that we as academics need to understand the potential as well as the limitations of AI so that we can introduce it into our teaching and learning processes. For those of us who are thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be replaced by a robot or a machine, no, AI is not there as a replacement for human teachers. It's a tool to augment and support our teaching. The humanized, transformative teaching that we need to do cannot be offered by these AI tools. Really, we need to look at ChatGPT as how can we enhance the learning experience of our students? How can we transform higher education? How can we change how teaching is delivered by academics, and how is knowledge accessed by students? And instead of focusing on the output or the creation, which is Bloom's highest level, maybe we need to focus on how do we apply knowledge? How do we make new meanings of known knowledge? How can students engage with ChatGPT outputs, but still develop the critical thinking skills, creativity, and problem solving that we need in the 21st century? So technology is disruptive. In 1978, televisions were introduced, and I'm sure there were lots of criticisms about that. The headline about teachers must fight computers was from 1981 in a Canadian newspaper, where teachers thought that PCs would replace teachers. We're still in the classroom. So what we need to do is integrate ChatGPT into higher education and use its benefits to our advantage, but also being aware of the challenges that we might experience in the learning process. And McKenna et al. And them said that if we embrace tools like ChatGPT and other AI, and we combine it with innovative teaching methods, then higher education will remain relevant. It will be effective in us being able to prepare students for future challenges and the skills needed to succeed in a technology-driven world. We really need to, prepare our students for the 4th and 5th industrial revolution. And we need to teach them critical thinking and problem solving. And we can incorporate ChatGPT into our learning processes so that this can actually be a tool that we can use effectively. But the impact of this and AI in general will depend on how we implement the tools, how we use them. Are we thinking about the potential that they have to offer us? All right, so I'm almost at my last slide. What is the way forward? We need to teach students that there is a time and a place for using this tool. It depends on, and from our perspective, it depends on what our learning objectives are. As academics, we need to familiarize ourselves with AI tools. We need time to play with it. It's still so new. It's very intimidating in some cases. We don't, even if we started playing with it, we still don't know all the nuances around it. So we need to really engage with it. We need to then look at it from the perspective of our courses and what we're teaching. What are the cognitive tasks that we want our students to perform without AI, and what can we do using AI? How can we use tools like ChatGPT to ethically and strategically deploy it within our curricula? And then we have to bring the students into this because they are the other part of the equation. They need to be given the instructions, the rules, the expectations. When we're using these tools in class, we need to explain the pedagogy behind it, how they're going to find it improving their learning process, why they should not only be focused on the output, but the whole process of learning and how ChatGPT actually fits into that. So we're going to be changing our context, what students need to know, how do they need to learn it, how are we going to design assessments, how are we going to design evaluations, and really it makes us have to relook at a lot of the things that we do in our everyday teaching. All right, so I'm at my last slide. And if education was simply about transferring knowledge and skills, then yes, we can think about universities becoming extinct or having not much value. But there's a lot to be said for the human impact in terms of interacting and engaging with students. Students are hungry for that. many of them are happy to come back after the online COVID teaching because they get to engage, they get to do peer learning, they get to speak to their peers, exchange ideas, discuss things in a hopefully a safe environment. But students of the future have a lot to deal with in terms of AI. They're going to have to wrestle with questions of humanity, with questions of obsolescence, with questions that are related to ethics, because AI is here. AI is infiltrating every aspect of our lives. And so this really means that we cannot regard it as the enemy, but we have to embrace it and use it to our advantage in higher education. So that brings me to the end of my presentation on higher education. I just would like to end off by saying that I'd paraphrase Julia Roberts in Notting Hill, where she says, I'm just a girl standing in front of AI, trying to understand how it's going to impact me in my everyday life. So I hope that this was useful to you, and I hope it connects pretty well with Professor Leung and Kana in terms of what they will share with you today.
Prof. Chenia, thank you very much. Those are very, very valuable perspectives. And I think the audience may realize that the argument is not so much anymore about banning or embracing AI. I think it would be irresponsible to ignore AI. And I think it would be irresponsible to send students out into the world without being able to drive these technologies. So thank you very much for that. I think that is very useful in the dialogue that we hope to have a little bit later. I'm very excited. Prof. Leung is a computer scientist, so in contrast to the other speakers that you're getting today, he's not a biologist. So Grace, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate that. So Grace is a computer scientist, and she actually teaches software engineering and ethics and computer forensics at the Academy of Computer Science and Software Engineering at the University of Johannesburg. She's also doubling as the Vice Dean of Teaching and Learning for the Faculty of Science. So in terms of a scientific background into what we're talking about, and in terms of an application into the teaching and learning space, Grace, welcome, and we look forward to listening to your talk.
Thank you very much. Good morning, colleagues. So before I begin, I would like to just ask people to put in the chat, and I will have to randomly choose one because we don't have time to cover everyone's option. But could certain participants just volunteer a subject topic that you would like me to try and get to work around when we get to the ChatGPT demonstration portion? So you can think about a topic that's close to your heart, something that you teach in your classrooms. Put that in the chat, and then if I pick it randomly, then that will be the theme that everyone else is going to learn about this morning. All right. Okay, so let's talk about ChatGPT as your co-pilot in the classroom. Now, the way this series of talks is presented is it's focused on ChatGPT. However, while that is the case, I would like to bring your attention to a range of other applications that are out there, that some of which you may have heard of, some which you may go, well, I haven't seen that yet. But these are all applications that have been making use of AI, and it's been boasting that, oh yes, we are making use of this AI. For example, Duolingo now makes use of an AI to offer even more personalized language training. And so it's really interesting that we've got all these tools, but why bring them up when this topic is really just about ChatGPT? Well, the answer lies in what I am going to talk about next, and that is, how do these applications achieve this intelligent behavior? And it turns out that the applications that I've listed here on the left in the different colors are all effectively powered by the same model. So the same artificial intelligence, namely some version of GPT, whether it's version 2, 3, 3.5, 4, which has been brought up. So they all actually are making use of the GPT AI that is offered by OpenAI. So what is more important for me is to actually talk about GPT itself rather than just ChatGPT. Because if your students, if this is about talking about how your students will be taking advantage of ChatGPT, or you take advantage of ChatGPT in the classroom, then the idea is there's other AI, you're using the exact same AI powering all these other applications. And it does make sense for you to know about these different applications, because they shouldn't be off the books. You can take advantage of them and use them. Now, besides OpenAI's GPT technology, there is also different attempts at creating similar technology from Google, because we all expect, well, surely Google and Meta and Microsoft must, being the big tech companies that they are, surely they are also contributing to the space and coming up with their own special, amazing AI model. And yes, it did. Google has one. Google has something called Lambda, and then Meta, which is the Facebook company, has something called Llama. And then I'm going to leave it there and leave Microsoft out. And you're thinking, well, wait, hang on, but surely Microsoft has done something. But let's put that on pause for a minute. Now, all three of these different types of technology, GPT, Llama, Lambda, they actually are all using the same type of technology, which is known as large language models. And don't worry, we're not going to turn this into a computer science lecture, but I would just like to explain to you how this large language model effectively works. So think of large language models as an AI program that needs to learn one thing. It needs to figure out how to generate text. So to give you an example, if I said to the audience now, I said, please complete the rest of what I'm about to say in the sentence. I say the University of KwaZulu. I am very certain that everyone here is going to go Natal. And how is it that you know it's Natal? And that is the crux of how large language models work. Effectively, it needs to study a really large body of text, which Prof. Chenia has mentioned earlier. And in the case of GPT-3, the older version that's being used in ChatGPT at the moment, is they decided to get this body of text from the source. And so they 410 billion tokens, and tokens can be regarded as words. They process 410 billion words from large bodies of text from Common Core, which is effectively a curated version of the internet. So you can see 60% of it came from the internet. There was also some web text, there were a few books, and then about 3% came from Wikipedia. And so this AI went and scanned all this and said, let me try and analyze all this text and get a sense of the different patterns that normally occur when you look at a certain piece of text. So to give you an example, I went to Wikipedia and I looked at this particular article. And what the model does is it scans this text and it says, right, I'm going to assign a probability to each of these words that this word is going to appear with another word. So, for example, if we look at the word scholarship and we say, well, what are other words that are likely to appear in the same space as scholarship? Chances are that scholarship of teaching and learning will come up. And this is the same type of technology that comes up when you are typing up searches in Google or any other search engine like Bing. And so here is an example where I go scholarship, and you can see as I type scholarship of, you will notice that there they go, we think you probably mean scholarship of teaching and learning. And that's effectively it. When you type in a prompt in ChatGPT, you are basically putting in a bunch of words, which ChatGPT then analyzes and says, oh, I noticed there's this combination of words. And with these combination of words, what's the probability that, you know, what's the next likely available word that should appear in my response? Well, and I'm pretending to be ChatGPT now. What should be my response as ChatGPT to the user when you've given me these words and now I must put it all together in a sentence? And so probability speaking, it will say, okay, if you're talking about the scholarship of, and I go, it's probably teaching and learning, and then it will look up the large bodies of text that it has gone through, and it says, well, there are certain words that were linked to scholarship of teaching and learning, and we're going to put those words into a sentence or into these paragraphs and throw it back at the user. All right. So the question then is, if that's really what's happening, wouldn't it be fair to say that ChatGPT effectively is regurgitating what it's found on the internet out there? And yes, the chances are actually quite high. If you keep asking ChatGPT certain topics and you ask it to do things over and over again, maybe with certain variations, then you will find that, oh, hang on, it's the same wording appearing repeatedly, and the formulation of this wording is quite likely lifted from other parts of text that it has analyzed. The other thing that will happen, and this should not come as a surprise to you, is that ChatGPT may actually get racist, among other things. And the reason for that is, remember, where did it get its information from? The majority of the text that it studied was the internet, and you know the internet contains such amazing content that nobody ever said anything bad or mean about some group or some minority. So this can occur, and this is something you need to be able to mention to your students in case they are not aware of this issue. Another big concern, and I think this is something that many academics have identified and picked up and said, well, I see that this is happening and now I'm calm. ChatGPT is not going to put me out of work. It's definitely not better than me, is when it gets the information wrong. And this is referred to as hallucinations. And effectively, ChatGPT is hallucinating and under the very strong impression that it is correct. And so this is an example of when it got it very wrong. And this was from a previous search that I had. I was looking up geology-related facts about Kimberley, South Africa, and ChatGPT very, very confidently spat out these bullet points for me. And when I then took it to the HOD of geology in my faculty, she rolled her eyes and she said, wow, you know, ChatGPT really, really is bad at geology. So if there's a few geologists in the audience, maybe you can also contribute and say why this is an absolutely terrible contribution. But I am not a geologist, so I will just have to take the geologist colleagues' word for it. The last thing I want to bring up is that ChatGPT does have old knowledge, which Prof. Chenia had said. It is up to 2011. So if you type in who owns ChatGPT, who owns Twitter, and remember that Elon Musk purchased Twitter last year, you will see that it says, as of my knowledge, cutoff date of 2021, Twitter was a publicly traded company. And so you might be wondering, well, if that's the problem, then can't we just tell ChatGPT to please retrain itself? Don't look at information up to 2021. Why not just look up 2022's information and look at what's happening now? Because surely it's like that, because training it is easy. There's no need for us to put inputs in there. Well, since then, OpenAI has come out with ChatGPT, GPT-4, not ChatGPT, GPT-4, which is the technology underlying technology of ChatGPT. And one of the biggest changes that they were really proud of is that now GPT-4 is capable of receiving images as inputs. And so this was a showcase example. It's not available yet publicly, but this was a showcase, a video showcase where they said, all right, if I provide an image, for example, of my fridge, what are a couple of meals I can make with this? And ChatGPT was able to recognize what was in the photograph and then say, here is an answer for you. Right. And then the other thing that OpenAI was really proud to point out is that GPT-4 is amazing in improving how it does in tests. So when ChatGPT first came out, everyone said, oh, no, we've got very dangerous problems now. ChatGPT is passing exams in the following subjects, including a medical licensing exam in the US. So if you pass that exam, you can operate as a doctor in the US. And now you can see that with GPT-4, it did even better. And one of the reasons why it's able to do better, besides it's analyzed a greater body of text and it has more memory, is how that is possible is due to this. So we've indicated that training is required. You need to train it so that it knows what to do. However, training or retraining needs a lot of money. But OpenAI did not have that issue because when it pushed out ChatGPT, one company was very interested in what OpenAI was doing, and that was Microsoft. So Microsoft plowed in a lot, millions of dollars into OpenAI. They set up these powerful computing systems and was able to make use of these powerful computing systems that Microsoft had. And through that, it was able to push out GPT-4 in recent days. And to be honest, I had not expected GPT-4 to come out this quickly. But I suppose with the right amount of resources, things can move very quickly and make it possible. So anyway, I'm going to now move on to using ChatGPT as a teaching and learning pilot. So let me open up my screen. Hopefully you can see my browser. Can you just confirm that you can see it? Yes, no?
Yes, we can.
Yep. All right, thank you. Okay, so hopefully you know how to get to ChatGPT. It is https://chat.openai.com/chat, or you can just search for it. You do need to have an account with it. I have been using ChatGPT in my classrooms, and so I decided waiting for it was not worth the trouble. So I went and paid $20 for a monthly subscription. That's why you see that I've got the ChatGPT Plus. Now, when you enter your environment, when you sign in, you will see that at the top, there says model, and it says by default, it is GPT 3.5. And if you press the button, you will see that you've got 3 options for the paid version. And that is the paid version includes GPT-4 as well. Now, if you look at GPT-4, you'll see that the reasoning, they rate it as 5 stars or 5 bars. The speed is a 2 because it is much slower, and the conciseness is a 4. Whereas the default is the reasoning is not as good as GPT-4, but it is a lot faster. And I am going to stick to GPT 3.5 today because that is probably the version that most of you have. But I will show you quickly what GPT-4 is capable of. So the first thing I want to show you all that I found really useful for me in my classroom is, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I absolutely detest having to set multiple choice questions. And the reason for that is because I struggle to come up with alternative options that might be close enough to the answer, because I don't want to make it too easy and you're like, that's obvious. So I'm scanning through, and I am going to take Marian's topic about discussing the principles of accountability and transparency on ombudsmanship. All right. And I'm going to put that, no, not there. I'm just going to try and copy that, or I'll just type it up. Okay. So I am going to ask it, and because it's a chat bot, you can type messages as if you were conversing with it. So you don't have to say please, but I just like to say, okay, please generate number of, maybe please generate some, okay, actually let's do this. So I'm going to pretend to be a student, so you can see both of it at the same time. So I'm going to say, please help me to study for a class test on accountability and transparency in ombudsmanship. Okay, so what it does is okay, you can help, and what it then does is it comes up with some key concepts and topics that it has identified in the topic of accountability and transparency in ombudsmanship. I will have to defer to Marian to tell me if this is more or less okay and accurate, because remember, it could be hallucinating, but I am going to assume, Marian, that this is relatively okay and there's nothing too inaccurate about it. All right, so it gave me some topics because I said, please help me study. Now I'm going to say, please test me using a, oopsie, it's not a, okay. Please test me by using multiple choice questions, and please test me using multiple choice questions with 5 options each. And then I say, let me answer the question before you tell me what the correct answer is. Keep giving me questions until I say stop. All right. And then it says, sure, I can provide you with multiple choice questions. And notice it remembers it's on accountability and transparency. So I say, please begin. And then you go, great, here's your first question. Now I'm terrible. So Marian probably knows the answer to this, but I am like, what is the primary role of an ombudsman? And I go, I think it's B, but I think it is B. Right? And it says, yes, I'm correct. And now it goes and moves on to the next question. And it will keep doing this until you basically say stop. All right. And obviously you can use the same approach as a lecturer to copy these multiple choice questions and put it somewhere else. All right. Austin Sharkey has a question there. Please tell me what is a NEMA section 24G principle is and what it is implication. All right. So let's say that this is kind of a descriptive essay. All right. So what I'll do is I'll put in a new chat because I'd like to clear its memory. And let's say we are going to turn this into an essay. So please generate, and I'm deliberately doing this, 3,000 word essay discussing what is a section 24G principle and what is its implications from an environment, sorry, I can't type, spell, environmental management. Okay. And if you type that, you will see there they are going at it. And you might go, hang on. This isn't quite an essay. I need some headings or so on. You can actually ask it to please put in some sections or rephrase the paragraphs And I must say, Bongakiles Mabasu saying you're very shocked by how fast this tool is. Well, it might be that it is actually quite fast because I'm on the paid tier. If you're on the free tier, it might be a little bit slower. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think if I copy all this, this is 3,000 words. And I can tell you the answer is it is not 3,000 words. So you go, oh, no, that's not acceptable. So you go, please extend this to 3,000 words. Please restructure with headings and subheadings. Please try and include citations. Let's see. And there we go. But so the one thing you need to know is that it's actually very bad with citations at this point still. But again, one thing you will pick up is that it isn't actually 3,000 words. Despite the fact you keep asking it, it must be 3,000 words. And you might be wondering, why is that the case? It's just because of the limited memory that GPT 3.5 has. So it is really incapable of doing so. You'll notice that I did say make it longer, and it is longer, but you see then it stopped here. It says the river, and then you're like, stop, and you go, oh, is that it? No, you can say, please continue. And then it proceeds with the with this. Okay, so it didn't really give me citations, and as Prof. Chenia has said, it is bad with citations. It has actually found some fake citations, but I think you should still be cautious about it, because when you do things like this, ChatGPT's focus is not on writing academic papers. So this for ChatGPT is fantastic, but there are other tools out there, other applications out there that might be working on focusing specifically on creating very good citations. And so they might use those other tools. All right, so as an academic, as I say, you could get it to create multiple choice questions. Another thing you can get it to do is you can ask it to come up with lesson plans. So I really liked the one question earlier, which was how to end load shedding in South Africa. And I wonder if you didn't read this in the Business Insider one, but I will ask this now. So I'll do a new chat. I go, please provide a lesson plan in which I discuss how to end load shedding in South Africa. Okay, and so this is like saying, all right, and you can see it's coming up with topics of discussion that you can bring in. No, you don't need to say please. I just want to mention, I just like to be polite. You can actually be mean to it. Just go generate a test. I don't know how okay, but I don't think I want to do a test. But what I want to do is, as a computer scientist, I want to show you, and I do want to point out that people have said, oh, this is plagiarism, this is definitely plagiarism. Absolutely. This, if someone takes this, copies it, pastes it in their essay, that is a huge concern. Now, how I have been using it, and Prof. Chenia mentioned that we have to rethink how we do assessments, is I want my students to know how to use ChatGPT or any of this generative AI properly. So what I have done is I have created base essays. So I use the create essay feature of ChatGPT to create those shorter base essays that touch on certain topics in a very shallow way. And I even ask it, and let me see if I can't do it, because it sometimes does, it's very, I don't get it right all the time. You would think that if you do the same thing over and over again, you would get the same results. That is not the case. So I am going to do the following. I say generate a starter essay. So I am saying generate a starter essay to discuss the, and I'm going to use the topic that I had, the ethical and legal implications in information technology when AI is used in determining whether someone should be granted parole or not. The essay must test students on critical thinking. So please include a few inaccurate statements in the essay. So when I do that, it sometimes does do it. It sometimes inserts some inaccurate statements in there. However, those inaccurate statements are very obvious. They say, here you go. And you're like, oh, but I want you to put it inside the essay. And sometimes I get it right. Sometimes when I prompt it, it will insert those inaccurate statements in somewhere in the essay for me and tell me, listen, this is inaccurate. And then I would have to remove that warning sign so that the students don't see it. But other times they do this. And if you think about these statements, these are, I don't think my students are that daft to think that these are true. AI in parole decisions is a new phenomenon and has not been widely adopted. AI can only be biased if explicitly programmed to do so. Absolutely not true. All right. So the starter essays are how I have been, so I've issued these starter essays to my students, and I effectively tell them, work through these essays and send me the final product, but with a track change version of it. So I can see what was originally ChatGPT and what was their own contribution. And it really helps to get a sense of what the students have understood or picked up from there. And the reason why I like I said, I do not know if it's going to work very well because it is relatively new, is if I do it this way, I'm really hoping that students understand the limitations. They learn to understand the limitations of ChatGPT or other generative AI like this and see that they can work with it going forward. Because if many of you recall, I mean, some of you are very young, but I am pretty old. So when I grew up, one of the things I had to do to check if I spelled something correctly was I had to go look it up in a dictionary. So it's the same here. This is really about using ChatGPT or any of the generative AI as a tool. It is a really good tool. If used correctly, it can be a good tool to start someone on their lesson plan. It's to reinforce their learning. But I'm going to stop here because I'm going to run out of time. I've got like 4 minutes remaining. I think actually no, I ran out of time. Sorry, I think I went over time. I'm looking at the wrong time. I just want to show one more thing. Sorry, Prof Vosloo. And that is, colleagues, I would suggest that you also look at Bing. So ChatGPT costs money, $20, but Bing is free. Go to the chat, go to the Google chat, Bing chat. And now I believe that Bing chat is made available to everyone. If it's not available to you yet, just sign up and indicate that you're interested and get on the waiting list. Now, the way I got onto the top to closer to the front of the mailing list, the waiting list, was I went and jumped hoops for Microsoft. I pledged my loyalty to Microsoft Edge browser. I hate it, but I love it now. And I've got access. So you've got a creative mode, which creates please create a poem about load shedding in South Africa. And it can do that. I'm not sure how you're going to use it in teaching and learning, but I'm sure there are people who are very creative. And what I want to point out is why I wanted to point out Bing specifically is Bing has one thing that ChatGPT does not have. And that is Bing, notice here, when you type your prompt, it searches, it gains access to the internet that Bing has access to. So remember, Bing is a search engine. It has access to all the different articles. So it searches those articles and it uses those articles as additional reference to augment the response it gives you. So if you want recent, what's happening now information, the correct tool, in my opinion, the correct tool to use is actually Bing, not ChatGPT. All right. Anyway, I think I'm going to leave it there, and then I can have many debates and questions from the colleagues. Thank you very much.
Grace, thank you so much. That was so enlightening, despite the load shedding poem. You brought some light into our lives in terms of the use and the power and the limitations of these predictive AI tools. So thank you very much for that. I think we all got something to apply in our teaching and learning spaces where we are, and even across research as well. So I think these principles are so wide-ranging and so general that they would be useful to everyone. I think without wasting any more time, I'd like to move on to Prof. Guegim Kana. Prof. Kana is our academic leader for research and higher degrees in the School of Life Sciences at our university. He's a bioprocess technology expert with a keen interest in the application of AI in the process modeling and optimization. He's a distinguished academic with multiple awards, and he has supervised students in this field. He has more than 100 publications in national and international peer-reviewed journals, book contributions, and which have been highly recognized and cited. One of his research works published 10 years ago on AI to improve biofuel production has been cited 180 times. So Prof. Kana is really one of the early adopters of AI and the technology and the power. And Prof. Kana, we look forward to hearing you explain to us how we can use this in our research fields. Thank you very much, Prof. Kana.
Thank you very much, Prof. Vosloo, and good morning to everyone that has joined us for this program. Just a minute for me to share my screen. It's perfect. Okay. Okay, let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Right, okay, thank you very much once again. Right, try to get things perfect so that great, it's perfect. Right. Yeah, we are here today again to go through a new development in the space of technology that is a complete game changing in that space of technology that's touching different areas of our endeavor. OpenAI, like said Prof. Olaniran, that came up 30th November, attracted approximately 100 million users within 2 months. That's quite a record compared to other technologies such as Facebook and others. And ChatGPT, just like said the previous speakers, has been trained on a vast amount of books and information from the web. That's why it is able to accurately, provide a response to some of the questions given to ChatGPT. And surprisingly, the technology is not completely new, right? We may think that ChatGPT came to existence on 30th November last year, but in actual fact, the GPT technology is not a new technology. The first publication by Google Research that came up in 2017, and it was titled, "Attention is All You Need." that have been cited 67,000 times. That's a good publication, and that forms the backbone of the generative AI that we are seeing nowadays. In other words, Google, with its publication, was actually one of the first entities to venture to the area of a transformer network. But the difference here is that OpenAI made it easily accessible, made it easy for everyone. Right? That's where the difference comes in, where everybody has access to it. Yeah, that was a little bit of history. But we'll look at a little bit of content, which I will cover a little bit before we go into the discussion section. We will see how AI can be used to develop a research proposal, because the talk given to me is majorly how AI can be used in the research space. We'll see how it could be used to develop a research proposal. We'll look a little bit how it could guide in selecting the appropriate methodology. Not only select the methodology, it could actually guide you to step by steps how to go through that methodology selected. And again, we will look at how ChatGPT could be used in crafting achievable ends and objectives, and how it will help in selecting the methodology for your research work. Not only selecting the methodology, you walk again step by steps how to achieve that. And more importantly, we know for sure that interpreting the result is one aspect that's difficult, time-consuming. ChatGPT can assist in streamlining the exercise. And beyond that, the discussion, which you need to compare your finding with the existing literature, the ChatGPT has a capability of doing that tremendously, because it could synthesize, analyze, synthesize large amount of literature. And in my presentations, I will be switching from time to time from the slide to the ChatGPT platform, which will try a couple of prompts for you to have a real practical appraisal how the tool works. Why do you need ChatGPT in scientific research? The answer is simple, because some of the most complicated tasks can now be automated. For example, you need to go through a large amount of papers to read and synthesize, but ChatGPT has a capability of quickly synthesize research paper, saving the time of researchers, which could be used to address other aspects of research. It also provides support throughout the research process, starting from the research proposal itself. It has tremendous capability, as you're going to see, how it can help your research proposal. It could perhaps outline your research proposals, bring it in light the different key areas that need to be covered. In addition to that, beside your research proposal, it will guide you through the developing the aim and objective, crafting aims that are smart, that are achievable, that are time-bound, that are clear. It will help you to do that. It can also help in selecting the methodology, like I said earlier on, and guide you through the various steps. It will help in guiding your data collection as well, right? And helps in interpreting your result, comparing your finding with existing literature. But for sure, we know that computers are designed in such a way that if you give the wrong request, it's going to give you the wrong output. What goes in is not far from what goes out. That's why the prompt engineering, the one that has been mentioned by the two previous speakers, is extremely important to get accurate responses from the ChatGPT environment. If you ask the wrong questions, and the wrong question could be something that makes sense in your mind, but doesn't make sense in the computer mind, right? You could appear to be logical within yourself, but the machine interpretation is that it's not logical. It will give you something that you don't really expect. In other words, your prompt has to have some requirements. You have to provide the background, the context. to let ChatGPT know exactly what you are working on. And the task that you need to carry out need to be clearly specified, right? And you have to give a clear instruction to the machine for it to be able to come out with something that could make sense. And again, referring to what had just said the previous talk, it may not always be accurate. Now let you, the expert, to look and refine your query in order to make the response much more accurate. And for example, if you look a little bit how the prompt is formulated here, I'll slightly go through my ChatGPT, if it's possible for us to have an idea. Okay, I'm gonna just get through. You can see my ChatGPT is a ChatGPT 4. I'm going to open a new tab to say that I will start a new message. I'm telling ChatGPT we want to carry out a research. We want to carry out a research work and generate an academic paper in the field of life sciences, for example. That's the background. I'm specifying the task. What you need to do, your task is to guide us through the different aspects of the project. Okay, sometimes you have slight mistakes, got it correct, but that should not be of the project and paper writing. Then I specified again instructions, use academic reporting styles and generate 10 research topics for the development of new medicine to cure virtually everything, okay? It's a little bit of brainstorming, asking the machine to give you ideas to generate research on medicine that will cure everything, almost everything. If you ask ChatGPT, it said yes, you could see that it's developing those research topics for us. The first one is saying that we could have one to identify the research question or problem. Sorry, this should include the methodology. Okay, I'm not happy with the response given to me. I'm going to ask him to regenerate again. One quick way is to ask to resubmit again. Generate 10 research topic for development of new medicine. Okay, here are the potential topics generating, targeting epigenetic modifications to prevent and treat cancer, develop personalized gene therapy for inherited disease, develop new vaccines, develop new antibiotics to combat drug resistance. You see, I have an idea of some topics that we could actually work with already. Let's go back to the PowerPoint environment. Right, in other words, we have to craft our prompt nicely in order to have the suitable result out of it. Now, how do you create a compelling, a well-structured and compelling research proposal in ChatGPT? Just like I mentioned earlier, the capability of this technology are tremendous. It will outline the most important element of your research and therefore provide information of the most important element to include in your proposals, the background, the research gap, the research objectives, the methodology to be used, the expected outcome. And you'll be surprised to see that ChatGPT can actually, in your research proposals, advise the source, where to get the source of funding. In addition to that, outlining research proposals, it will help in developing the research objectives, which are well aligned with the gap that has been identified in the literature. You can also determine the appropriate methodology to be used, the appropriate techniques to be used for data collections. And it will help in conducting a thorough literature review, given its capability to analyze large amount of text, right? That will enable it that will help in generating a large amount of, that will help in working that space. But more importantly, you could simply ask ChatGPT to give you some template for research proposals, well-structured templates that you just simply need to complete or to fill it with some information, and that will guide your research, or that will help you to apply for required funding that you may want. I've summarized in this slide some tested prompt, right? Prompt that could help you that could help in aspect of proposal development. If you want to outline the proposal, you simply write to ChatGPT prompt, outline the proposal for a study on. You now enter the field you want to study. If you want to write an introduction to your proposal, for example, we could say generate an introduction for a research proposal on. The beauty here is that this prompt will quickly help you to craft an engaging introduction. Okay, you don't need to stress your mind. It will help you. Of course, you still need to validate it based on your knowledge in the field. Still, your proposals, one nice prompt again, which I've tested that works, is that you could say outline the methodology sections of the research proposal. Okay, you simply ask it to outline the methodology section of research proposal, and it will outline the methodology. I could ask it to elaborate on the methodology. If it's not clear to you, if you wanted to go in details, it will go in details and elaborate on that methodology. Okay, I've summarized a number of prompts here. Those prompts are also available in one document that has been previously compiled that could be distributed perhaps at the end of the training. But in the meantime, let's just take one of these prompts and see a little bit how it works to generate an introduction for research proposal. Let's go back to our prompt environment. Okay, we already have the research topic here. What we're going to ask the system this time around to do will be to outline. Let me just see a little bit where we were. Yeah, to generate an introduction for one of these topics. Let's say we wanted to generate an introduction for the role of microbiome in disease and the development of new probiotic. Generate an introduction on. Let's see what ChatGPT does. Okay. We could see that's generally already crafting our introduction for our research proposal here. Okay. Of course, just like I said, you have to understand the field you are working on. You have to validate the response of ChatGPT. Okay, you have to validate before you proceed to other aspects. You have to ensure that. Now, let me just ask you for that question here. Let's ask the machine to outline the methodology to be used for this research work. Okay, let's say outline the methodology. For this research. Of course, I've already provided the background, the task, and all the instructions from my initial prompt. Here's an outline of methodology. You have to go through the research design. Of course, this is a methodology for the proposal. Of course, it has outlined sample collections, microbiome analysis, clinical and biochemical data collections, selection of probiotics, dosage and duration treatment, data analysis, and so on and so forth. Okay. In other words, you could ask ChatGPT to generate a number of useful prompts that will help your research proposal. One other prompt that we may test, find it quite interesting, will be to give you to generate a timeline for the proposal, right? And the prompt will help you to plan and organize the research project in a logical and much more efficient manner. That way, ChatGPT will provide you with a timeline outline and timeline to achieve the key milestones that will help you tremendously in generating your research proposal. Okay, having said that, let me just switch back to our slides a little bit. Okay. In addition to providing the outline, ChatGPT is extremely important in analyzing the gap, well, in identifying the gap in literature, because it will synthesize the different research papers that have been published in a particular field, of course, up to 2021. because even ChatGPT 4 that came out 3 days ago still has is already trained on 2022 set of data. Now, how can this tool help you in mining the literature, in developing literature review? Most time-consuming tasks that researchers normally embark on can easily be addressed using ChatGPT. For example, summarizing the finding. ChatGPT is quite quick, going through literature, summarizing the findings, bringing out the main contribution of research work. It will actually help you to study the paper, come out with the strength and the limitations of a given research paper. It will easily bring out the research gap being addressed by the writers. It could actually analyze the methodology used in that research paper. You could actually ask ChatGPT, the given research paper, to summarize it in the layman perspective. Okay, if you are dealing with complex research paper, ChatGPT could bring it to the lower level that we clearly understand. And in addition to that, ChatGPT could also bring out emerging patterns in a given literature. Okay, again, in my next slide, I've summarized again some of the prompts that have been tested and their work that could be used to achieve different aspects of your literature. For example, if you are summarizing your finding, you could just ask ChatGPT, summarize the key findings in this research paper on, all right, to work it out. For example, we're going to go back to our ChatGPT to try one or two of these prompts. If you look at the main contributions of the given paper, you could actually copy a large portion of the paper, enter the ChatGPT prompt section, ask ChatGPT what are the main contributions in this study to the field of specify the field. It's going to work it out for you. What are the strengths and limitations of a given publication? It's going to work it out for you. You have a number of interesting prompts here. If you try it on a given research paper, you're going to realize that you have tremendous information coming from that research paper. In actual fact, I tried on one of my students' submission. The system can highlight the strength and the limitation of the paper. That could be useful in providing some kind of feedback to the students as well. If you don't mind, let's perhaps ask ChatGPT to summarize the key finding of research paper. I'm just going to give the topic alone. Let's go back to our ChatGPT environment. Let's ask, for example, ChatGPT to summarize the research findings on the topic that has suggested to us earlier on, the topic that was on the role of, okay, let's say, perhaps, let's take something else. Let's say developed. It should give us the research finding that exists already on the developing personalized gene therapy. We go back to ChatGPT, summarize. Research findings on. Let's see what comes up from there. Okay. It's giving us some information based on synthesizing papers that exist in the field already. Okay, it's giving us good information which could help, that could guide our thinking in work in that aspect. We have it has synthesized some information already from the existing documents that have been published in the area of gene therapy that will guide our thinking, that will guide our progress in that aspect. Okay. It will bring out some challenges that could be addressed. It's if, however, there are also challenges associated with personalized gene therapy, including the difficulty of delivering the therapy to the affected cells and the risk of immune reaction to the viral vectors used for delivery. I'm not a specialist, but I'm sure we have many specialists in the field who will agree with me that this could be a real gap. Right? I have superficial knowledge in the field, but I think there's a real gap in this research, in this area of research. Okay, back to our slide. The next aspect is how do we use ChatGPT to achieve or to craft out clear achievable research objective. Okay, we know for sure that the research objectives are crucial in determining the direction of any research work. Okay, and it is always requested that your objective need to be clear, they need to be specific, they have to be measurable, they have to be achievable, relevant, and time-bound. That's why we said the objective need to be SMART. Okay, SMART will be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Now, what ChatGPT does is that it will help us to identify the research question that need to be resolved to achieve those objectives. Okay, and it will also help to refine the research objective. And the researcher could use it to refine the objective to make the objective much more clear and concise and clear, right? It could also define the key terms and the key concepts that are linked or that are related to or that are central to the research objectives. Importantly, ChatGPT has a capability of generating hypotheses that will be tested using your research phase. And it could also evaluate how feasible those objectives are. Okay, these are a couple of things that ChatGPT will help in refining the objective of your work. And again, what I've done here is that I've worked out a number of prompts that will help craft out the objective. Basically, what you need to do is that after identify the research topic, you just cut and paste this prompt into the ChatGPT box and to guide you in your research work. For example, you could ask, what are research questions that need to be answered to study ... Okay, you could ask what research questions are relevant to specify the field. We could also ask, refine the research objectives. Okay, we can use to refine the research objective or generate hypotheses for a studies on the effect of. I also find out that prompt was quite useful. If we go back to our prompt a little bit and ask ChatGPT, what are the research questions that need to be answered? Okay, let's go back a little bit to our prompt. I asked the study that we're working on. What are research questions that need to be answered? Let's go back to it. Okay, we're talking about personalized gene therapy. Let's ask the research question. Let's ask ChatGPT, what are the research questions that need to be answered for then our topic? Okay, what are the research questions that need to be answered for developing personalized gene therapy? Okay, let's ask ChatGPT. Okay, he said that here are some research questions. The first question is, what are the genetic mutations that cause inherited diseases and how do they affect the function of affected cells and tissues? What are the most effective delivery methods? Okay, how can the immune system be modulated to reduce the risk of immune reactions? And what are the long-term safety and efficacy outcome of personalized gene therapies? What are the ethical and social implications of personalized gene therapy? Okay, these are some research questions that will help the candidate, the researcher, navigate its way in carrying out the given research. Okay, the next thing we're going to see a little bit how. My next slide is going to see how to use ChatGPT to identify research methodologies. The good part is that ChatGPT, based on the research problems given and based on literatures and objectives, it should be able to guide you whether you should go through quantitative research techniques or qualitative research techniques. And beyond that, it could go to the extent of suggesting experimental setup for you. What experimental setup need to be carried out in order to achieve the objective of your research? It could also support on the data collection phase. It could help generate survey questions, for example. It helps in the data collection phase. And it could also analyze the detailed steps to follow for a given methodology. And during the analysis phase, ChatGPT will suggest the right statistical test to carry out to interpret, to analyze the result. It will suggest the right statistical test to carry out. And still under the methodology, we'll actually talk about ethical considerations and standards that need to be observed for your data collection. For example, you can provide guidance on obtaining informed consent remotely for participants while maintaining the confidentiality. Okay, again, the next slide, I have a couple of prompts that will guide in this space and identify research methodology. One prompt will be generate a list of relevant research methodology for studying the effect of the topic. Ask to generate a list of research methodology. You could ask ChatGPT to summarize the pros and cons of using a specific techniques, right? And you could ask it, for example, to develop survey questions for participants with a level of agreement with a statement on a 5-point Likert scale. Okay, ask to generate a survey question that aspect. In other words, the set of prompts that I've summarized that are packaged here will help the users as well to navigate the environment and bring out quality response when it comes to generating the research methodology. Now, how do you use ChatGPT to transform, to interpret your result? Okay, ChatGPT, how do you use it in the result interpretation? You know for sure that one of the great challenges that students have, there is a kind of experiment, but when it comes to result interpretation, it's always challenging. And ChatGPT will be a good candidate to co-pilot, right? I would say that to do it for you, but to assist the researchers, to co-pilot the researchers along that line interpreting the result. For example, we actually ask ChatGPT to analyze the result of microarray and identify differentially expressed genes. For example, you could ask ChatGPT to do that. You could ask ChatGPT to generate a summary of statistics, such as means, medians, standard deviations, and that will provide a quick way to researcher to understand the central tendency of those set of data. You could ask ChatGPT to generate graphs, plots, such as graphed plot and so on. It will definitely do that as well. I haven't tested ChatGPT for ANOVA generation, but colleagues said that it actually could generate ANOVA, some statistical analysis such as ANOVA and so on, and provide a good summary of the result in that aspect. In other words, ChatGPT again appeared to be a perfect candidate to help researchers interpret the result. And some of the prompts that are useful in that aspect would be, you could ask questions such as analyze the result of microarray experiment, like I've said earlier on, to identify differentially explained gene. You could ask to generate a scatter plot to visualize the relationship between the data set. You could ask ChatGPT to conduct a t-test to determine if there is significant difference between the means and a group of data. And you could carry out other statistical analysis or data interpretations exercise using ChatGPT. My next point would be, how do you use ChatGPT in discussing your findings? Okay. Now we know for sure already that what is a large language model, that is, it has a capability of interacting with text and with large volume of text and existing literature. But in that case, that will enable the systems with the capability to extract relevant information from the vast amount of papers, right? And it will now be useful to compare your findings with information extracted from the large amount of papers. In this way, ChatGPT will be quite efficient in comparing your finding with the information extracted from existing literature. And again, the word of caution here is that the current database on which ChatGPT was trained stopped in 2021. Okay, that is, if you are relying on ChatGPT, you still have to maintain the up-to-date scientific capabilities by looking at much more recent literature in your which you want to compare with your current findings. Again, I've put forward a number of prompts, which I'm not going to go for time's sake. I'm not going to go through those prompts again. We could just ask ChatGPT to summarize the findings of the literature review. We put compare the result of our study with the findings in the existing literature. In that case, compare your result with existing ones. We could ask ChatGPT to evaluate the implication of your result in the context of existing knowledge, right? In other words, it will take your result with the vast amount of data on which it has been trained. ChatGPT will try to compare your finding with what has been published in the field. One prompt which I've tried that also worked nicely is you asking the system, for example, you type in, I have obtained results that are not consistent with previous studies. Can you help me explain why this might be the case? Okay, if you try that prompt as well, you're going to have a very lovely insight into your findings, right? And again, something I would like to emphasize is that even though ChatGPT will provide support for discussing experimental results in light of existing literature, it is ultimately up to the researcher himself to interpret and evaluate the information that ChatGPT has generated, right? Even though it streamlines your discussion exercise, it still lies to you to analyze, sorry, to interpret the findings from ChatGPT. My next slide is how do you make well-informed conclusions and recommendation based on research findings, based on your research findings. Okay, how do you make good conclusion based on research finding? We know for sure that ChatGPT has tremendous capability when it comes to analyzing text. Of course, if you use ChatGPT throughout your research journey, you should be able to generate a well-structured and comprehensive conclusions that will reflect the findings emerging from your research. Okay, we generate a well-structured, comprehensive conclusions, because to help to summarize the key findings and the key highlight of your research work. And again, it will help in recommendations because it could provide evidence-based recommendations, well-informed, practical. Recommendation doesn't have to be just for recommendations, it has to be something practical, achievable, well-informed from your findings. And since ChatGPT has gone with capability to analyze text, it has capability of suggesting recommendations that are worth considering. And again, you have a set of prompts that are packaged here that will help in that space. For example, you could ask ChatGPT to summarize the key findings of the research. We could ask it to discuss the implication of research results in the field of study. We could ask it to evaluate the strengths and limitations of the research methodology used, for example, provide recommendations for future research based on the findings, right? We could ask ChatGPT to provide recommendations for future research based on findings, or provide suggestions for incorporating future research in the specific areas, okay? All these prompts have been tested and they seem to be generating very useful informations that will help, if you use those prompts, that will help to produce high quality and well-informed conclusions and recommendations for your research work. Yeah, to sum it up, the use of ChatGPT and other related AI technology in the field of research has a potential to, is a game changing actually, it has to revolutionize the way research is being carried out. You can use it from brainstorming of ideas, like we've done at the earlier phase of this study, of this ideas, identify specific objective to be covered, the research methodology can be addressed. Detailed steps in the methodology can be followed. You could use it to interpret your findings, compare your findings with existing literature, and generate well-informed conclusions and recommendations based on the findings generated by your research. And again, this does not rule out the fact that the researchers need to carry out those experiments in laboratory or the fieldwork in order to have enough data. A word of caution, which I would like to really emphasize to this audience, something that you may not be aware of, ChatGPT has the possibility of generating experimental data. That is, while going through our student research, we also have to take account of that data can be generated by ChatGPT. In tabular form of data can be generated. My last slide is my brief answer to some complex questions, okay? And again, I will emphasize that these are opinion, not definitive answers on those questions. The first will be, should ChatGPT and related AI technology be used for postgraduate research and thesis writing? My answer is absolutely yes. I could expand by saying this. I've supervised a large number of students, and as academic leader of research, I've gone through maybe thousands of examiners' reports from different countries. And I know for sure that one thing that we want a student to achieve is to have a good document. It has to have publications. But above that, our graduates have to be employable. They have to have the skills. I'm happy to have a graduate student that spend 2 years in the laboratory or the field, acquiring skills, experience, or spend 2 years time in industry, getting acquainted with industrial environment, and invest only 1 month in his write-up and come back with a write-up that makes sense in addition to the skills he has acquired, rather than a postgraduate student that will spend 2 years in a write-up that goes to and fro between him and the supervisors for corrections, and only 1 year in laboratory that will finish and will not be employable. In other words, ChatGPT could streamline the effort in developing research work and give enough time to our students to acquire skills that will make them fit in the job place, that will increase their employability. Therefore, my answer is absolutely yes. Secondly, should ChatGPT and related AI technology be integrated into the existing teaching and assessment framework? Prof. Chenia earlier on in her talk, she said there was a need to rethink how to assess students. I'm going to add on top of that, there's a need for a change. Okay, there's a need for a change. There's a need to rethink not only how we assess students. There's a need to rethink what we teach and how we teach our students. What graduate attribute we want them to have. I'm happy to have a student that has made use of ChatGPT to generate innovative ideas and has practicalized it. It has tested it. It has acquired skills, rather than having a graduate, a first-class graduate that can memorize, record information, but lack practical skills and not employable. In other words, I will encourage the different institutions, including those all over the world that have decided to block ChatGPT to their students, to please proceed to make ChatGPT open to both undergrads and postgrad, because it will help in their journey. And again, as we have seen, ChatGPT, students do go for tutorial for assistance. And at undergrad, ChatGPT will help a little bit to some extent as a virtual assistant as well. Therefore, the question is not whether I should stop it, but how do we empower the academic staff to make use of ChatGPT? There's a need for a thing, there's a need for a shift, but the shift needs to come from the teachers, not from the students. We cannot block the technologies. We can rather, because the technology is already available, we can rather see how to harness the power of technology to enhance our research. And thank you very much. Sorry if I've taken more than the required time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Kana. Again, very illuminating in the research area. Colleagues, as the facilitator and host, I have to present my apologies. I have not cut down the time that the presenters have given. I think because this is a first of what we envision to be multiple workshops. I think we have a lot of learning to do, and I think the more we can glean from these expert presenters, the better for preparing us as we venture into this brave new world. I have asked that if there are pertinent questions that you would like to the panel to answer, please pop it into the chat. We will get back to those questions, and those questions we can either answer in response to you, or it can inform what we see to be a series of talks like this, where we really have to get to grips with this beast. I think the opportunity or the ship has sailed on whether we should embed AI in our teaching and learning and research space in the higher education system generally. I think that ship has sailed. I don't think we can responsibly send students out into the world who cannot drive this technology, because they will just be useless wherever they end up eventually. So it is really a skill that we need to impart, and in order to impart the skill, we need to learn the skill first. And I think this is really where we should be heading with these types of discussions, in terms of finding ways to empower ourselves. And I think Prof. Kana said correctly that we need to empower ourselves, we need to empower staff in order to acquire these skills so that we can impart them to our students, we can embed them in our teaching and learning in a responsible way, so that we do not fall foul of the limitations that were so well explained in terms of what AI can do and what it can't do. So I think that is very, very critical. We are scheduled to carry on until 11 o'clock. And I know that you will have made other plans based on the timing that we provided to you, but personally, I'm willing to remain on the call for longer than that if there are other burning questions that we can possibly allow you to pose and to come up with. And maybe if some of the panel can remain behind with me, then I would really appreciate that. Because we were planning longer discussion time, and unfortunately we've now sort of run out of time, but I'm willing to remain longer. And if the panel can join me in that, I would really appreciate that. I would like to open the floor. We've had some fascinating questions in the discussions, and thank you to the rest of the panel for already addressing some of those questions in the chat. So I really appreciate all of the effort that everyone has already put in. Some of the issues range from can we trust this, and it's the George Santos of citations. So no, don't trust it for citations, etc. I also put something into the chat that the creation part of Bloom's taxonomy that was seen as the pinnacle has now become sort of outsourced to some extent to AI, and then the sort of lower cognitive skills of analysis and evaluation have now actually become the prime cognitive skills that we need to impart to our students. So yes, the creation has now become easier with all the prompting and everything else that we've learned about today, but the evaluation and the assessment of that, and just being honest enough to call it rubbish that comes out of there, we need to be honest enough about this and find a way to generate a response and an integration to those sorts of issues. I can see Hafizah's hand. Hafizah, can you proceed?
Yeah, I just want to comment on what you said now. And I think the most important thing is the prompt. Whether it's a sophisticated prompt that is put in or one that is very general will determine the quality of what you're getting out of it. So in as much as, yes, ChatGPT is creating the content, how skilled a student is in terms of asking the right question with the right sort of little clues or things that it's asking is very important. And I think that is something, so there was something that I heard about a career in prompt engineering, how you can actually, use this in all the new types of things that we're going to, career paths and stuff that are going to arise as a result of this technology.
Thank you very much, Hafizah. I think we've always been in the business of training students with skills that we don't know what they are going to need eventually. So we preparing them for jobs that don't exist yet. And now all of a sudden there's this thing called prompt engineering. So, I mean, we would need to teach ourselves, and then we need to impart some of those skills. And I think between what we've seen today from the 3 excellent presentations, thank you to our speakers, has sort of primed us to the power and the potential that AI and ChatGPT specifically has, and maybe GPT-4 if we get into that stage. But then also, I think what is very critically important in all of the presentations were the limitations. So this is not the magic bullet. This is not the fix-all. This is an enormously powerful resource with major limitations. And I think that we must understand this. That is really, really critical. And if we understand the capabilities and the limitations, and this is what this talk was, this session was all about. How do we harness the power that is in there with obviously the sort of caveat that there are problems and we need to be aware of what those problems are so that we can actually address them appropriately. Professor Islam.
Hi, good morning, colleagues, and thank you everyone, especially to the speakers for excellent talk. I think, as you see, it's my comment, it's not a question. For example, when something comes new, I think is we try to grab it, but what I believe, every good thing has a bad things behind of it, so we need to be careful at the same time. So what do we need to do, as you mentioned, maybe we need to do the brainstorming and meet time to time like this, and to also talk what is working and what is not working, and what is good to take and what is bad to remove or delete. So this may help to take these ChatGPT things to bring it for teaching and learning and research and higher degree. And at the same time, as Prof. Kana mentioned, many things we can ask everything to ChatGPT, but we should not make our brain lazy at the same time. And that can create some problems. The student will not do their own thing. They'll always ask to ChatGPT, can you do this? Can you do that for me? So, but we need to see how it goes. And but this way we can make things better. We may take the good one and we may delete the bad one in future for all kinds of activities with ChatGPT. And I also saw another speaker from UJ, I think, who mentioned many other platforms we have. And some platforms are paid, some are free. So we need to check maybe which one is better and which one maybe free one is better. So because money is always not enough or tight. So that way, I think we can maybe help each other. And maybe we can also create a platform like communication chat box, a platform like even a WhatsApp group, I don't know. So that can help if somebody got something new that can share in the group, other people can get help. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Islam. I think because we are slightly over time, I would like to give each of the speakers maybe just a few minutes for some closing thoughts that you would like to leave with the audience. And which, Hafizah, can I start with you? Any closing thoughts that you want to leave with our audience?
Yeah, I think that people have been afraid of the implications of ChatGPT, and I think we just need to change our perspective to how can we use this as a tool. And really, it does require us to look at how we are assessing and what do we want to get out of the assessment, and changing we need to move or modify Bloom's now, so that the process of learning is being encouraged and assessed. And this is why I said maybe we need to have things like e-portfolios where you're assessing how the student is doing over a task or whatever, rather than just what is their final product. So the learning process becomes very important, and we as academics first need to know what we want to achieve in the classroom, and then how ChatGPT can actually be used. There's lots of resources out there of how it can be used in the classroom, but we then need to select the right ones for what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you very much, Hafizah. Grace, any last words of wisdom that you would like to leave our audience with?
Right. I think if you are not willing to move along, you're going to get a very rude surprise in the coming months. Because yesterday, and I think the day before, Google and Microsoft competitively announced that they were introducing their versions of GPT into Office 365 and into the Google Docs environment. So in the coming months, you're going to find it available. Your students are going to find it available. And if you're going to hide under a rock or put your head in the sand, your students are going to run circles around you. And I do agree with Prof. Chenia. It's about their learning and the process. So what we have done for my computer science department is we allow them, we actively encourage them to please use ChatGPT to teach them how to code. But when it comes to handing in the assignment, we're not interested in that assignment that works. We ask them, please explain it to us. And that's how we're working around it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we just like to support your call to not put our head in the sand. If we look at the environment, it is an incredibly competitive environment. And once you have an environment where Alphabet and Meta and Amazon and IBM and Salesforce and Microsoft are putting huge amounts of funding in, it's not going to go away. It is just going to grow, and we need to grow with it. Otherwise, we are going to have serious problems. Thank you very much, Grace. Prof. Kana, any last words from you?
Thank you very much, Prof. Vosloo. It was a very lovely gathering, roundtable discussion. Just that time was not sufficient for possibly the participant to ask various questions. But I think if we can continue on this track, we got to unravel different capabilities of ChatGPT that we can use to improve our teaching, learning, and research. Just something that I will have mentioned a little bit when it comes to the area of teaching and learning. Currently, there's capabilities to assess students and prevent them from and ensuring that we really assess students. For example, asking them more practical questions than theoretical questions, and context-based questions. Will also, ChatGPT will find it difficult to get those answers. We thought previously that giving student diagram to interpret would be a good thing, but ChatGPT-4 seems to have the capability of interpreting diagrams. That is not a good aspect. But all the way, it's a good initiative that we can pursue along the line. Thank you very much, Prof. Vosloo.
Thank you very much, Prof. Kana. I think in terms of what you and the other speakers have shared with us, I put a link to a very informative paper that was, or a news article that was published on how we can be dealing with ChatGPT in our environments. And I think what is really important, and I'm trying to share my screen, I think it might take some time, but if you could see that, I think what we need to look for is to avoid questions where the students can just copy and paste output from ChatGPT, and that we really need to force them from what can be perceived as academic dishonesty to a place of authentic learning. And so there's a sort of spectrum where
Okay, everybody, I think we may have just lost Andre. Prof. Olaniran, I don't know if you just want to say a few closing words as well while we wait for Andre to reconnect.
Thank you very much, Ashley. I think just in terms of the closing remark from me, I think firstly, I want to say thank you very much to all the presenters for the excellent presentation that's been shared with us. I think a lot of people have learned so many things during the course of the workshop. And I think AI, whether we like it or not, is here to stay. Colleagues, we can't run away from that. We've used that over the years. A good example of that is the artificial intelligence network that allows to be able to minimize the number of experiments to do in terms of optimizing reactions in the lab, because it's able to simulate and predict what the outcome is going to be. And so we need to embrace the technology as it is, and with caution based on what has been presented in terms of opportunities that is there and what we need to be able to do. So it's something that we need to embrace. And I think I like what has been shared earlier, that we should see the technology or the platform as some kind of a co-pilot to be able to assist us, not to take away our fundamental duties or activities, but to be able to assist us in carrying out some of those things that we need to be able to do. So it got great applications in terms of our research, as has been outlined, and it also has so many applications in terms of our teaching ability. I like the aspect that was shared by Prof. Leung, that was looking at how you can use that to even create question banks for students. And there are also opportunities, for example, before you give assessment to students, you can see how you draw your assessment and see the kind of response that student can get from ChatGPT, so that you can see whether what you need to revise, so that you don't give them that opportunity to just copy and paste, and give them something that they can properly critique. For example, a started document that was mentioned earlier, where they can work on and they can refine and can stimulate some kind of critical thinking and all that among the students. So that is very, very important. I think it also raises questions around the Bloom's taxonomy that we have, to say, is that order still correct? If we know that the information are there, and in terms of creation of content, students have access to some of this platform where that can be done. Where do we place that within the Bloom's taxonomy that we currently have? But I think in terms of the objective of the workshop, did we achieve the objective? I think the answer is yes, from the comment that I've been hearing and the engagement that have been seen on the screen in terms of people asking questions and the responses that have been coming through, which indicates that there is opportunity probably for further engagement in the near future on how we share our experiences on this platform in terms of our engagement with it. So I would like to thank everyone for attending. I think the attendance at this dialogue has been very overwhelming. I think at some point we are ourselves about over 140 people in attendance, which is very great. I want to thank Sashlin and the PR team for the excellent job they did in terms of assisting us to set up the the meeting. So thank you very much for that. I also want to thank especially people that join us outside of UKZN. When I was looking at the people that I joined the meeting, I see people from UCT, I see colleagues from UJ, I see colleagues from Lautech, Ogbomoso, from all the way from Nigeria joining us at this meeting. So thank you to everyone. And I hope that we will practice, or we will utilize what we've learned and use that to promote teaching and learning and research within our various spaces. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. So I think we've officially come to the end of the program. Unfortunately, Andre is not able to reconnect with us. On behalf of the School of Life Sciences and all the speakers, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We will make the recording available to everybody once it's up, and we are also producing an article just summarizing the key points from today, which we will send to everybody else. So please expect an email from us about mid next week. I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll be closing the session.